So hi everyone, I'm Leslie Johnson and I'm a co-senior program here at Planet in Focus. And I'd like to introduce you all to Scott Ressler with us today. Scott is a filmmaker with the National Geographic Society, and we are presenting his first feature film, The Last Ice. In this story, we are introduced to two young Inuit from different continents who are fighting for the survival of their culture in the face of climate change and increasing pressures on their lands and waters. So hi, Scott. Thank you for joining me here today.
Hi, Leslie. Thank you for having me, and thank you to Planet in Focus for having the film.
Thank you. So why don't we start off with you telling me a little bit about your filmmaking background and what initially connected you to the story, and why you wanted to tell the story of vanishing ice through the lens of Inuit communities who straddle it.
Sure. Well, I've been a conservation filmmaker at National Geographic for the past 7 years. And I've been making films mostly focused on the ocean around the world, shorter documentaries, no features. But then when it came time to do something in the Arctic, we knew it was going to have to be a much bigger story. We knew we wanted to do a feature, but what we didn't know was what the story was actually going to be about. And in our initial trips up to Nunavut and to Greenland, we were really starting to make sort of the typical scientific sea ice, wildlife. Everyone's seen the sad polar bear out on the ice. But we were sort of making that film. But it became evident almost immediately that there was a much bigger story to be told, that this was going to be more about the people who actually lived in the Arctic. And it just started sort of evolving from there. And all these different story elements started coming into view. And it wasn't just, the historical story of Inuit and colonization and all that in context, but it was also the story of outsiders coming in today in the form of resource extraction and militarization, shipping routes, all of these things that are happening as the ice melts. So what it started as a film about, polar bears and ice, eventually ended up in what you're seeing today, which is trying to really contextualize everything that's happening in the Arctic today, and it's going to happen in the future.
Great. This is a story about a people who are intrinsically tied to the Arctic and what they've been through since colonization. Tell me about your process of coming to understand these histories, and what impacted you the most about learning that these histories, and I guess how they impact colonization today in communities.
Yeah, it was for me going in. I had zero previous knowledge about Inuit or what had happened recently. And almost every single person we spoke to in every community we went to had a different story, but in some ways a similar story that started adding up. And one of the challenges for me going in, and especially with the film, was trying to tell that story in a way that not only honored it, but also was focused on an audience who'd never heard it before. So putting it together in a way that was really sort of both educational and then also engaging, so that people can really understand the totality of some of the colonialism. And especially one of the surprising things, or one of the biggest takeaways for me in Nunavut especially, was just how recent the colonization was. And of course, how some of the policies still linger or exist today. And some of it, does feel very generational.
For sure. So maybe you can tell me a little bit about your process working with the Inuit communities, working with the characters in this film. There's often been a negative sort of impact from filmmakers coming in and working with indigenous communities, in particular in the Arctic. So maybe you can tell me about how you built trust and worked with these communities in a meaningful way.
Sure. Well, I mean, my personal mantra throughout this entire thing was just listen. I mean, it, I think that having, like I said before, having no preconceived notion or no preconceived knowledge was helpful, because I really was sort of a blank slate, although I did feel like every time I talked to someone new or every time I went back, and I still feel this way, the more I went, the less I knew. And I also tried to sort of embrace that. Like, as an outsider, especially, I would never feel today like I'm any sort of an expert on the Arctic or have a really, you know, a really sort of deep understanding of some of these issues, because it's not lived experience for me. And so with the film, I was trying to sort of get that across for the rest of the world. But when it came to engaging with people and sort of trust and all that sort of thing, obviously it's a bit of a leap of faith from all parts, especially given the usually not so nice history of outsiders coming in and filming. But try to be open and honest, and also, you know, always be aware of what I didn't know and what I would never know, and try to sort of keep that front of mind.
Did you have sort of like a story building process with the community or with the characters? It is, you know, you do touch upon some really nuanced histories that are really great for people to understand and come across. So sort of like, how are you being kind of like informed by the people on the ground?
Sure. Well, some of it was done through speaking with people who are experts in the communities, and a lot of it was more anecdotal, speaking with people who maybe they had a grandfather or a parent who was touched by colonization. But it was really, I think, one of the questions I get asked a lot was, well, did you live there for 4 years, for 5 years? And it was really a lot of smaller trips, some long, some short, of going up and coming back. And I think that was also helpful in terms of building up my sort of vocabulary and understanding, because I would go up and talk to someone and start getting a little bit of insight into a particular issue. But then I would come back home, go into the edit room, go into production, and really be able to sort of sit with it. And because as an outsider, you're not going to get it in one day, in 1 month, sometimes not even in a year, sometimes not in a lifetime. So being able to sort of, for me to process some of these things and take the time to, what I hope was to tell the story in an honest and open way. I think that was sort of the process for me. It wasn't just sort of thinking we knew everything right at once,
Sure.
or even now.
Um, and I wanted to talk to you about the characters who you chose. They're really, really great characters. One, of course, is Natalie Okalik from Nunavut, who is a wonderful youth advocate. She's very accomplished, Inspire Award winner, you know, lots of positions that she's held in Nunavut in terms of leadership. And also Hunter Alexiak Perry from Greenland. What was it that you were looking for in the characters for this film, and what was it about these two young people that you wanted to share within the context of your story?
So Alec Hatsiak was sort of an interesting way we came about filming with him. We had done a trip up to Greenland, and we had a filming subject there who had told us that he was an expert and all this stuff, and it turned out to maybe not be the best fit for the documentary. But while we were out on the ice with him, Alekatsiak was helping us as a guide, and just speaking to him, you know, at night. And I think the team really decided, like, here's a really interesting story of someone from the next generation who is trying to become a hunter right now, and sort of struggling not just with you know, a diminishing hunting culture even in Kanak, but also with rapidly changing climatic conditions, where maybe his uncle who's teaching him, you know, things have changed so rapidly just in a generation in terms of the weather and the climate, that it's getting more difficult to teach. In Nunavut with Matali, we knew that we wanted to sort of balance the story geographically a bit, and we started just asking around for some of our contacts. Like, we're looking for someone from the next generation in Nunavut who can speak to a lot of the issues for the youth. And it was like all roads led to Matali. Everyone kept saying Matali Okalik, Matali Okalik. And when we eventually spoke with her, it was right around the time she was receiving the Inspire Award. And, you know, I think Matali was maybe understandably reluctant at first to be involved. But after many, many conversations, I think she was seeing what we were trying to do with the film. And eventually, as you'll see in the movie, was very open with us about some big issues in her life that I'm hoping resonate for a lot of people, not just in the Inuit world, but also beyond. And I think that her story is also very interesting as somebody who didn't grow up entirely in Nunavut. You know, she was, a lot of her childhood was spent in Ottawa. Now, for her personally, she has this story of trying to reclaim some of the stuff she feels like she lost by growing up down south, which I think is a story of I've heard borne out from many people I talk to.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, so these personal stories are framed within the context of climate change. What did you find was most urgent about looking at climate change through the Inuit lens?
Well, I mean, in terms of like actual urgency, just stories of hunters falling through the ice. I mean, it doesn't get more urgent than that. I think that in terms of the personal stories being balanced with sort of this bigger climate story, yeah, I always had two audiences in my mind. And one was the Inuit world, and the one was the South, and they're obviously two very different audiences. I think that for a lot of the world, climate documentaries just sort of throw a lot of statistics at you and you know, overwhelm you with sort of doom and gloom. And so I didn't want to do that. There's maybe hints of that in this film, but the majority of it is about people, and it's taking what's sort of this enormous intangible issue for many people and making it personal. And my hope is that through Matali and Alakatsiak and other people in the film, people will be able to see parts of themselves or maybe their relatives and realize this is not some you know, issue that is sort of amorphous and not real. This is something that is affecting people and is affecting everybody really, and will affect everyone even more so in the coming decades.
Um, just to shift gears a little bit, from a filmmaking standpoint, the Arctic is a really challenging place to make films, but it's also incredibly unique and beautiful. So maybe share with me some of the experiences that you had just from like a filmmaking standpoint on the ground.
Sure, yeah. So one trip that stands out in my mind was the one we basically did one big shoot to capture most of the wildlife that you see in the film, and we camped out on Lancaster Sound for 8 weeks, and that was beautiful. That was you know, every day just pinching ourselves, knowing that we were getting to see these amazing things and these pods of hundreds of narwhal and polar bear that most people never get to see. And obviously that's sort of what a lot of people think of when they think National Geographic, filming wildlife in the Arctic and all that sort of thing. But, you know, I think the way that our crew which was sometimes just me with a camera, was embraced everywhere we went, and by people and communities. And, you know, it was always like, come film with us, you know, come to our house. It was so different than filming in any other part of the world I've ever been to, where you sort of get you know, what are you doing? Why are you here? No, don't film me. I think in Greenland, I went to a few kaffeemiks, which was new to me, which is a tradition of, it's basically an all-day party that goes from like 12 in the afternoon all the way to the next day, and it's just an open invitation for anyone, and you can come in. And you know, so a few of those I would go to, and you think you're going to stay an hour, and then you stayed 12 hours. That was stuff like that. A lot of the times when the camera didn't come out too, those were some of the best times, and just building relationships and really feeling like you're there. Those are the best moments.
um, so as we were saying before, as an audience member, it might be, I mean, for a lot of people, you know, watching this film, it might feel, you know, the Arctic is such a faraway place, and it's not easy to feel immediately connected. What do you think the best way for people to learn more and help support and amplify the voices of the Inuit asserting their rights in the region, and particularly in the, I'm going to fail on the pronunciation, but maybe you can tell it. Give us
The
the
Sourcewalk, is that?
yes.
Okay, yeah.
Important to get these things right. So can you say it again?
Pikela Sourcewalk. And I'm sure I'm pronouncing it slightly incorrectly, I'm sure, but
Mhm.
that's which is the body of water between Nunavut and Greenland that is been held up for protection right now, but is waiting on approval from federal governments. Um, in my mind, the best way to learn more and support Inuit for the rest of the world is by engaging directly with Inuit groups. And certainly for me, ICC is a good way to start. QIA, ITK, all these places that have good web presences. It's not hard to access this information. And I would encourage anyone who sees the film and wants to learn more, certainly don't learn more from me, learn more from Inuit. So yeah, I think that's the
Great. Thanks. Um, so just to some of those acronyms, so the Inuit Circumpolar Council is one of them, and a few, what were the other ones that you mentioned?
QIA, which is the Kikikani Inuit Association,
Mhm.
and then ITK, which I won't try to pronounce because I will do it incorrectly.
Okay, we'll look it up. Thanks. So tell us what is next for the film and where we might access it and resources around it from outside of the festival.
Sure. Well, the film is going to have a Canadian premiere on the National Geographic Channel on November 1st.
Okay.
The time to be determined, but you can just type in either pristineseas.org to find out more or go to National Geographic Channel's website.
Okay. And what's next for yourself, Scott?
Well, I continue working with ocean conservation for National Geographic. And right now we're just waiting for the world to open back up so we can further our travels and our filming.
Great. Well, thank you so much for joining us today and for having this conversation.
Thank you so much, Leslie, and thank you to Planet in Focus again.